But we begin with a lot of breaking news on Donald Trump's retribution campaign, thanks to two MSNBC exclusives. MSNBC is reporting that Trump's hand-picked U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan, could not find any career prosecutors in her own office who were willing to pursue charges against former FBI Director James Comey. Because of that, Halligan is taking an extremely rare step, recruiting prosecutors from outside her office to take Comey to trial. That is according to two people familiar with the selections. Halligan, a Trump loyalist who was appointed last month, her signature was the only signature on the Comey indictment. You'll recall Halligan's predecessor resigned after he resisted bringing charges against Comey and another one of Trump's perceived political enemies, New York AG Letitia James. Today, sources tell MSNBC that another top prosecutor from that same office, Elizabeth Yusey, is rejecting pressure from Donald Trump, refusing to bring charges against James. That is according to two people familiar with her discussions. Yusey told coworkers she sees no probable cause to believe the New York AG engaged in mortgage fraud. Yusey plans to present her conclusions to Lindsay Halligan in the coming weeks, and she is bracing to be fired. Joining us now, former federal prosecutor Ankush Khardori. He is now a senior writer for Politico Magazine, and Angelo Corazon, president and chair of Media Matters.
We've got lots of thoughts here, but first, you're a former federal prosecutor. Your reaction to this new reporting?
Well, I would say that the news about Halligan is not that surprising, that she couldn't find a career prosecutor to go in with her, but it is no, pun intended, I guess, but it is a real indictment of the case against Comey, that she couldn't get a single career prosecutor in the office to go. It was, I think, sort of widely suspected for those of us sort of around in the office because she signed it by herself. She presented it by herself. You would not do that if you could have found someone else at least to come in with you. But it does reflect a really damning assessment of the indictment and the case against Comey from the professional prosecutors in the office. She will find someone from outside of the office to come help her take this to trial or take it to trial.
How? Who?
There are people, see, this was underestimated during the first administration. There are conservative and Republican lawyers throughout the DOJ and U.S. attorneys' offices throughout the country, right? There's a U.S. attorney office in every district, judicial district in the country. That includes the South, right? It includes deep red states. John Durham managed to staff a whole team of prosecutors for that ridiculous waste of time and money that resulted in 2 acquittals in front of juries, including a false statements case in this jurisdiction, which may end up bringing somewhat prescient and a sign of things to come.
You know, for me, Angelo, this is just an ongoing drip story about another prosecutor who refuses to bend to Trump's will or is fired for that. And my question, as the lawyers kind of jockey and try to figure out, will I or won't I, how does this play in the orbits that you're in? I mean, when you're thinking about the array of storylines that are out there, my belief, or at least my assessment, is this doesn't land the way some other stories land. And I'm but it's, as Ankush can tell us, it's a critically important part of the overarching story because as the lawyers go, so at this stage goes the country, right? So how do you assess that that piece, okay, the narrative around the inability to get a lawyer to sign on? And how do the American people and those in the spaces that you're operating look at this?
So a couple of things about that. One, it's worth considering, you mentioned Durham, and I'm glad you did, because it may not be common knowledge for most people in America, but for the right-wing media, the audience that you're talking about, Durham is a name they know. Because he, for him, he was heralded for 2 years as if he had won the war on Christmas for conservatives. Right. I mean, he was going to be the guy that came in and put all these people in jail, from Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton to James Comey. They heard relentlessly, if you listen to talk radio or Fox News, that it was coming, that his special prosecutor, he was going to do this investigation. It was all going to be exposed. And at the end of the day, nothing happened, especially to the people they cared the most about. So they've been down this road before, and they don't want to get excited and lose again. They've lost a lot of confidence. They still want spite and revenge against these figures, but there's nothing new here for them. This is the same old con. And I think the best example of that is that you don't see people like Fox or Sean Hannity hyping this. You know who the biggest voices on this are? Gateway Pundit and a Twitter account called Pepe Lives Matter. They are the right-wing media influencers that are driving this. I mean, that's nonsense. That shows you where it fits in the ecosystem. They want something different. Now, they'll get excited about the indictment of Comey, right, because there's a small blip of Schadenfreude. But they're not following this as closely as the other developments are. And when he does these things, like demonstrate that he's going after the New York Attorney General, and there's new reporting that there's nothing there, it makes them feel like he is just stripping them along. And remember, this is taking place in the context where all this Epstein stuff is in the background.
Right.
So people say, you're doing all that, but you're not doing anything about Epstein. So in a weird way, every time he takes one of these efforts to use the justice system and he says it's about getting revenge, they say, great, but what about this? Can you not use the same powers to get us this thing? So it's not playing the way that he thinks it's playing, and it's not creating the excitement that I think they hope it's going to create. For him, it's making Trump happy, right? But it's not having the other effect. The last thing I'll just say, though, and I think that reporting that Elisa read at the beginning, it's worth underscoring. Any prosecutor, they couldn't find any prosecutor, and one thing that seems clear is that these prosecutors seem to be the only people in the country, that at least in many of these big, powerful positions, that don't seem to think Trump is going to be the president forever. Because they're the ones acting like he's the lame duck that he is. And I think we should all take a lesson from that they're looking down the road, too, and saying, yeah, this is going to pass. And they're going to follow the law because that's going to ultimately be in their best interests. And that's an important lesson.
You mentioned something about this earlier today as we were chatting on our call. We talked about this letter from these nearly 300 former officials from the Department of Justice. This is what they wrote in this open letter today. We believe it's our duty to sound the alarm about this administration's degradation of DOJ's vital work and its assault on the public servants who do it, according to an open letter signed by 282 former officials obtained exclusively by MSNBC. The former officials are making the most sweeping and serious accusations against the sitting president since Richard Nixon, who resigned in disgrace in 1974. The Watergate scandal touched the Justice Department, but the recently departed bureaucrats allege Trump has mounted a much broader and more sustained assault on its independence, policies, and personnel. As we were chatting earlier today, I just kind of made the point that, look, the independence, the jurisprudence, if you will, like defending some of the institutions, it is important. However, it is not necessarily the most important thing to people out there. And I frankly think, for me, myself, I think defense of the progress is what's most important. And I think what Donald Trump is doing here, this current fight, is not about defending the FBI or the Department of Justice or these individual agencies within there. It is about whether hard-won progress can survive when the law is weaponized. Like what he's doing to Tish James is not just about Tish James. And what he's doing to James Comey is not just about James Comey. Tish James even said herself, she's like, I'm not concerned. I'm lawyered up. I'm concerned about what he's doing to the American people. And I think that this is like a long line for a couple reasons he's targeting Tish James. She's a black woman, and he seems to like targeting black women. She is one of the people that has held him accountable, and he seems to like targeting people who has attempted to hold him accountable. And she's continuing to do her job. This is about weaponizing and punishing the progress, and the progress is what's at stake here. Yeah, the independence of the institutions, but baby, it looks like it's already gone.
Yeah, the independence of DOJ as sort of a totem for people, I think has been overrated for a long time by people in the media, going back to Trump's first term. Is I think something about the notion that the Justice Department would be fully independent from the president when the Attorney General isn't elected, he's appointed by the president, I think is intuitively not really accessible to people. But what they do understand is outcomes. They understand outcomes, right? They understand how law enforcement affects them and their communities and how it can be deployed in a way that is unfair. Even in a situation where you have like Comey, who's someone I've been plenty critical of, as probably everyone around this table.
Justice for Martha Stewart and Hillary Clinton.
For someone like Comey, a case that is so very transparently vindictive in nature, political in nature, it can have a sort of it sort of shoot backwards at you, sort of backfire a little bit, because it can elevate him as sort of a political martyr. And I think he's fairly well equipped to handle this. I think the perp walk idea that they've been kicking around recently, I know there was some more reporting about the day, is so stupid. Such a gigantic waste of time and money. And he'll just do it and go through the motions. He's not going to be someone who they can just knock around. Same for Tish James. Same for all of these sort of people who are prominent in politics and media who will know how to carry themselves.